right, just letting people in, just letting people in. Oh my God, I see a familiar face. Hold on. Mark is in the house. Let me get the recording started so we can make sure we have this. And I will keep letting people in. Record and cloud. All right, I'm going live on Instagram. We are all here. Let me know that you can see me, hear me, and all that stuff. So good to have you all here. Mark, it's so good to see your smiling face, my friend. Mm. Ah, I can't wait to hear. We got to catch up. We got to catch up. So, um, let me grab the chat so I have it. Cool. And one more to record. I get yelled at by my team when I don't hit all the record buttons. They go, "We don't have all the angles." I said, "Yeah, Mel just kind of." I've all been, some of you, if you've been following, Wednesday night, Buddha got a brother. I got 8-week puppy brain. Hence, the email that went out said, "Hey, we're doing it again, March 18th." And it went out on March 24th. He's slowly sleeping through the night. It's like having a newborn again. And a newborn with teeth. Sharp teeth. Samson is and he's like no he's not intimidated by Budo at all. Like Budo barks at him and he looks at him like, well, yeah, what? So this is going to be interesting as they continue to develop and everything, and they're starting to play, which is really kind of cool to watch. So but we're trying to get him trying to get him used to the crate, and he's winning the battle right now. Look at that puppy. It's a beagle. Yeah. So, oh, let me tell you. Listen, when I had Budo, because I go in for regular blood work, like the phlebotomist looks at me and he sees all these marks with Budo, and I look at him and I go, "Dude, man, I'm not a cutter. I have a puppy at home." And he goes, "Hey, I don't judge." I go, "No, I know, but it's kind of crazy what goes on." Oh my gosh! So we're trying to do some things a little different with Samson because we waited too long. So yeah, I think Budo's a little wondering. Like it's going on a week now, and he's kind of looking, going, "Hey, this little fur ball's not going anywhere. He's like gonna stick around." So we'll see. But I'm still doing all the stuff that I do with Budo, the walks and all that stuff. So he still has his time and all that stuff. So good. So good. Good to have you all here. This is a big week for me. Lots of stuff going on. Well, I'm doing this live. I got another live right after this. I got an interview after that. And then I actually go straight to the studio. And this week I'm recording the audiobook. So for the book. So I'm recording the audiobook today. Tomorrow I have a film team coming here all day. And then Wednesday I'm recording the audiobook. Friday I'm recording the audiobook. Saturday I won't be able to speak. I'm like, I don't know. It's going to be interesting because my first book, I didn't do the audiobook. So this is the first time to do it. But I don't know if anyone's like me with books. So one of the things that I do, I like the old-fashioned books. I want to feel it. I want to touch it. I want to fold the pages. I want to mark it. Okay. But with travel, it makes it hard. And this is a hardcover book. I have the soft cover advanced copy here, but with the hardcover book, you can't travel with a bunch of books. So what I tend to do is I get the Kindle version. I get the hardcover or paperback version. And then what I do crazy is I actually get the audiobook, because with the iPad Kindle app, you can sync the audiobook with the Kindle so it can read to you at the same time. And so I get a chance to do that. Yeah, and they kind of gave me, they're going to be sorry they did this. But they told me, hey, feel free to ad lib. I go, do you know what you just did? You just said, here's a microphone, take it away. I said, that's probably not the thing you want to do. But there's some authors or some publishers, believe it or not, that, like, I've got a friend of mine whose book is coming out in a week or so. And he literally, his publisher said, he said, when do I have to record the audiobook? And they said, oh, do you want to record the audiobook? And he said, yeah. He says, well, we need you to audition for it. I go, they have you auditioning for your own audiobook? Are you kidding me? It wasn't even an option in my situation. I said, no, I'm reading the audiobook. So I may be, unless I can try and do it in an English accent, we'll just have to run with what goes. So I'm recording the audiobook. Audiobook will be out at the same time, June 11th, as the book. There's more to come on that. I've added some things. You'll be the first to know that I'm adding. It's called the Wealth Unleashed Summit. So I'm going to run a free summit post book launch. So on June 15th is the tentative date, but you'll hear about that more. So yeah, lots of new stuff coming your way. And all I want to do is I want to make 2024 a transformative year for you all, money-wise, financially, but also from the perspective of building a life that is beyond a bank account, building a life that's meaningful, building a life that is by choice and not by need or defined by a bill payment schedule. And too often that's what happens, is like, well, how much do I, I remember, it's crazy when you start to think about how people manage money, don't manage money. Back in the day, I was one of those accountants that did house calls. So like I would and so I went to this gal's house to do her taxes at the time. She was a hairstylist. And I said to her, well, how much did you make? And she looks at me with this puzzled look. I go, well, I got to know how much you made so we can put it on the tax return. And she says to me, she goes, hold on one second. And she gets up from we were at the kitchen table, gets up from the kitchen table. She walks to the back of the apartment. She's there for a couple minutes, and then she comes back. And she looks at me, and she goes, I think I made about $35,000. I said, okay. So I wrote it down, and I stopped for a second. I said, how do you know that? And she looks at me, she goes, well, I just went and looked at all the stuff in my closet, and I estimated that I spent about $35,000. And so that's how I figured out what I made. I go, oh, yeah. But you think about it and you go, how many don't have their fingers on the pulse of the money coming in and the money going out? And we tend to think, well, building wealth and having financial freedom is this complicated formula that requires sophisticated thinking and algorithms and all that stuff. And it doesn't. It really doesn't. And that's why the book was written the way it was, why it has frameworks and pictures and stuff in it, is because I want it to be simple. That if we just look at it and say, look, I got to manage what comes in. I got to manage what comes out, what goes out, and I got to manage what I keep. That's it. It doesn't get any more complicated than that. But if we don't start at what's coming in, what's going out, and what am I keeping, trying to sit back and say, hey, where should I invest, Mel, doesn't matter, because we ain't got nothing to invest. So So when we look at it from that perspective, we want to make sure that we understand where this is coming from. Now, a couple things that I wanted to touch on that, and I'll open it up for some questions and all that stuff. But I want to kind of give us a lay of the land of where we are in the year. We're coming to the close of quarter number one. So we're a week away from the end of the first quarter of 2024 as we're recording this. And as we're coming to the end of this, we gotta look at things and say, well, where are we in kind of the journey? And I think this becomes really important to start to understand. First off, if we look at the stock market, there's the S&P 500, there's the NASDAQ, and there's the Dows. S&P 500 is effectively the top 500 large companies listed on stock exchange in the U.S. The Dow Jones is the 30 largest companies. So one's got a bigger portfolio than the other. And the NASDAQ is typically tech companies. There's 2,500 to 3,000 companies in there, okay? And we talk about this on an ongoing basis. And you'll hear people say the Dow is up, the S&P is up or down, this and that. It's a temperature gauge on the economic environment of investing in stocks, investing in the market, and doing the things that are doing. I see Megan, my dear friend Megan Simmerell's on Instagram. Hey there, how are you? And so when we start to look at it through that perspective, let's just see where we are. If we look at the S&P 500, and this is really a big deal. So S&P 500 is up for the year over 10%. It crossed the 10% mark in the first quarter. Now, that doesn't mean that's going to just keep going. It doesn't mean that, but why is that significant? Why it's significant is because long term, if you look at the S&P 500 over a long period of time, it has returned 8 to 11%. 8 to 11% over a year. Okay. We're over 10% in the first quarter. Now, does that mean we're going to be at 40% at the end of the year? Not likely. We got the election coming up. There's going to be a roller coaster ride. There's going to be all kinds of stuff going on. But it is an indication of the sentiment. I'm using the word sentiment because it may not be an indication of the reality yet. Okay, of what the consumer confidence is, what the investing confidence is, what's going on out there. The Dow is up almost 5%. NASDAQ is up over 11%. The tech-heavy NASDAQ is up almost 11. So the markets in the first quarter are up, and up at decent clips. You know, other things that I think that have happened to take into consideration, though, is that there's still some uncertainty. There's still some things that are going on that we need to be aware of. We've got legal battles on a couple of grounds. You've got Apple's facing legal battles. You've got different monopoly types of lawsuits out there. Things going on, but I think that the one thing that isn't being talked about, that is the thing that needs to come home to roost sooner or later, is something that people are terming or talking about called the quiet recession, the silent recession, whatever you want to call it. Let's just for a moment step back. What is a recession? A recession is 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth, okay? Meaning that our economy has shrunk 2 consecutive over a 6-month period. Statistically, and based on the data, especially what we're seeing in the market, that hasn't happened. So technically, we're not actually in a recession. But when you start to look at employment news, when you start to look at unemployment, when you start to look at the cost of living, if we just do a survey, if I just ask you and say, hey, when's the last time you went to the grocery store? Did you find that one, it was either more expensive, or two, you got less for what you paid for? That is the problem. Is people are, yeah, exactly, both, Missy. People are struggling, and yet we're not having the conversations around it because the cost of living, the cost of just getting through the days, getting through the months has gone up. And so as much as the stock market is up, it gives, for those of you that have investments and investments in a 401k or in retirement accounts, you're seeing your retirement go up and you're sitting back saying, well, I got this wealth that's going up, so I should feel better. But why is it that I feel stressed? Because I feel like I have much more month than I have bills. I mean, than I have money. And so what we need to understand is that, yeah, we'll talk about the statistics in the market and the stock market. And long term, we need to be there because you can't save your way to wealth. You have to invest your way to wealth. Okay. But at the same time, I don't want to be tone deaf to the point of saying, hey, y'all, just get with it. The economy's doing great. No, it's costly. It's expensive to fill a tank of gas, to buy things in the store. And if you want to eat healthy, and you want to eat organic, and you want to be those things, it's even more expensive. Convenience might be cheap in some cases, but it might kill us in other cases if we're not careful. So I don't want us to not think about that. And we can talk more about, well, what should you do to kind of navigate this? Because either way, we're in the game, like it or not. We're in the game, like it or not. And whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And so it goes right back to the first three things that I said. What are you doing? What can you do currently to increase the income that's coming in? And when I say increase the income that's coming in, I'm talking about, how do I build a bigger shovel to bring stuff in at? Now, if you're in a job, you could certainly go and say, hey, I would like to get a raise. My gut reaction to that is probably not going to go so well. Not because you don't deserve it, but hopefully you don't go ask that way. You probably do deserve it. And the key to getting the raise, getting paid your worth, is to prove your worth. The money will follow the value. So when we talk about increasing our income, the way we increase our income is to make it clear that people see our value and that we are doing the things to increase our value, whether it's to a company or to a customer, either way. When we do it to a company or a customer, the key then becomes to be irreplaceable to them, invaluable to them. I heard a story. I was watching. It was a reel or something, and this speaker was telling this story, and I thought it was kind of a cool story about this kid who walked into a store and asked, and he says, "Hey, can you give me change? I need to make a call." Okay, this is back with payphones, and so he makes a call, and the clerk is overhearing him have this conversation with this person, saying, "Hey, I'm just trying to see if I'm looking for a job, and I can mow your lawns and do that. And he says, and the person on the other end said, no, I've got that handled. He says, well, how about I mow your lawns for half the price? And the person says, no, I'm good. I've got a really good person that's doing it. He says, I'll mow your lawns and I'll mop your floors. And they said, no, we're good. I appreciate it. And they hung up. Well, the clerk that gave him the change looks at him and says, I love your energy. I love your attitude. How about I give you a job? And the kid looks at him. He says, no, thanks. I don't want a job. He said, but wait a second. You just got on the phone and asked for a job. He says, oh, I really didn't want a job. What I wanted to do is that's the person that employed me. I wanted to understand how good of a job I was doing. And so by me asking those questions, I now know that I'm doing a pretty good job because she doesn't want to replace me. And so when we start talking about, well, how do I make more money? The first place to start is, how do I bring more value? How do I bring more value to my job? How do I bring more value to the customers? How do I become invaluable in the process? The second is then we start to look at the stuff that's going out the door. Now we can talk about more income through side gigs and side hustles and all that, but it will always come back to, even if I put a side hustle in, what's the value I'm creating? And everything. Then we can look at managing the costs and the outgoes. Do I have to renegotiate credit card bills? Do I need to get on a debt pay down plan? Am I spending a ton on lifestyle needs and things like that, and wants that are draining it? Do I have a liquidity fund? All those things come into place. And then we look at what we're keeping. So we need to start to look at that if we're going to go into uncertain times, and we will. We just don't know when, because economics and business and financial markets cycle. So we will always have ups, we will always have downs, but the stock market has never not recovered. The economy has never not recovered. The question is, where are we in that cycle? No one really knows, but you're going to hear a lot of people that are going to say, I've got it, I've got it, I've got it. And they say, we're going down, we're going down, we're going down. Well, sooner or later, they'll be right. Sooner or later, they'll be right. So the point isn't us trying to make sure that we know all the answers. The point is, what are the things I can control? I can control my income. I can control my outgo. I can control what I keep. Then we use principles to invest and to build from there. That's the key. Okay. So those are some of the data as we had. Also, the Fed met last week, and they decided last week that they will hold in. So they're not going to. There was this projection that there might be a decrease in interest rates, four rate decreases over the rest of the year in 2024, and that would then obviously bring our interest rates down. It would also probably bring our interest rates down on our high yield cash accounts and that kind of thing. It would be better for reinvesting businesses like tech companies that are investing and borrowing to do that. And it would be something better for the markets, they think. They came out and said, we're going to hold rates the same. We're not going to reduce rates this go around. But they also indicated that they intend, or they're anticipating that they will do 3 rate reductions between now and the end of the year. So potentially interest rates are going to go down by the end of the year. Now, these are the Feds. They go to the beat of their own drum. And here's the other thing is, we call them the Feds. They're not part of the government. They're a separate arm. They're not part of the government. They're not controlled by the government and everything. Just know that they could change their minds. If all of a sudden the economics show that inflation starts to take off again, prices stay high, unemployment stays low, they might turn around and say, we're not ready to decrease interest rates. So we deal with what is, we plan for possible occurrences to give us alternatives, but we can only control the present moment. That's it. And so that's kind of the lay of the land as I think that we have going as of now. And like I said, we're getting to the end of the quarter. What will be interesting is that in April timeframe, we will start to see first quarter earnings coming out from the companies. We'll see what they say about their earnings, if their earnings have declined. And there's two things. They do these earnings calls. If you ever really want to understand a little bit about what goes on, pick a company that you love. You know, it could be Tesla, it could be Disney, it could be GE, it could be Apple. Pick a company that you love, do a search for their next earnings call. Okay. And it'll give you the date that they're going to release earnings, and they're going to do a call. What they do is they do a call with the analysts and shareholders to talk about the financials, how they did that last quarter. And in many cases, they give guidance for the rest of the year. So if you want to get a perspective of what is going on at the CEO board level of some of the big companies that are out there, just jump on an earnings call. Now, you don't have to jump on it live. They record them and they put them up. If you really want to find some of the older ones, you know, or one from this last quarter, just go to their shareholder or their investor relations or shareholder relations tab on their website. Download the most recent earnings call and listen to it. You may or may not find it overly interesting, but it'll give you an understanding of what goes on in the public markets, because every quarter they're releasing earnings. Every quarter they're doing filings with the SEC. Every quarter they're doing earnings calls, and on a regular basis, analysts and people are following certain companies and giving guidance on the companies. So it's something to consider. All right, with that, I've been talking for a while. I'm going to open it up for questions. I see some that are coming into the chat, and I can bring you up on screen too. If you're on Zoom with me, I can do that, and we can have a real conversation like human beings and everything. Let me answer Chris Ann's question, and then let me jump to, looks like Jessica, and we'll bring you up. So Chris says, is it worth to open an HYSA, a high yield savings account at this point? Yeah, because we don't know what's going to happen. So here's the thing. I want you to open up, if you're going to have any excess cash, if you're going to have anything that you need to keep safe, anything that you need to use for your peace of mind fund, your emergency fund, your taxes, a temporary parking place. Temporary in my book is 3 years or less. Put it in a high yield savings account where it's 100% liquid, where it's 100% insured, and there's 100% no fees. Don't put it in a regular savings account that you're going to get nothing on, even if it goes from 5% in a high yield savings account to 4%, and still 4%, it's going to be more than you're going to get somewhere else. Understand the purpose of the high yield savings account, or the purpose of having liquid funds, is not to create wealth. Okay? Your liquid funds are there to create peace of mind for you, to give you margin for error, and all of those things. There's other funds that are there to create the wealth. That's the stuff that's 5 years and beyond that you're not going to need. So remember that every dollar has a specific job description. If the job description for this dollar is to create liquidity and peace of mind, that it goes in a safe place without you sitting back and saying, well, I'm only getting 5% or 4%, where if I was in the stock market, market's up 10%, I lost. Yeah. But if the market was down 10%, you won. The purpose of the dollars in the high yield savings account is to not lose them and to give you peace of mind. So I say yes. And Chris, I have money at Wealthfront too. So Wealthfront has a 5% account. And it's, transparency. I get nothing for it, but it's one of the places I have a high yield savings account at is Wealthfront. And they're insured up to $8 million now. Oh, cool. All right, Jessica, can I bring you up on screen? Let's see if we can do this. Spotlight and spotlight. Boom. Look at you. Hi, how are you? Good to have you. All right, cool. I love this question. So the question is I'm getting paid, I have an entity, and when does the money come to me and how does it look when it comes to me? Pretty much. Yep. So remind me again, you're an LLC or S corp? All right, so you're a sole proprietor. All right. Cool. Well, this is pretty straightforward for you then. Okay. You won't be taking a salary, but here's what we still need to do. Okay, so your sole proprietorship, which is the simplest form of business structure, and in fact, most people will start there anyways until they get their legs underneath them. We don't need the complexity. We don't need a bunch of costs and complexity that you don't understand, especially if we don't know that we've got legs under the business. Let's get legs under the business first. So the way that the sole proprietor is dealt with is it is an alter ego of you in the way that the taxes are looked at. Okay. But I still want a separate bank account. So I want a separate bank account for your business. I want a separate credit card for your business. I want to make sure that whether your business is an LLC, corporation, or even a sole proprietor, that if someone comes in, and I'm speaking to the general here, and not just you, Jessica. If someone were to come in and take a look at your books, take a look at your business, they could see a really clear, distinct line between personal stuff, business stuff. And you could easily say, here's the credit card statements, nothing but business on there. Here's the bank statements, nothing but business on there. Here's the personal credit cards, nothing but personal on there. Here's the personal checking statements, nothing but personal on there. They do not meet. Okay. So now back to Jessica's question. So, well, okay, great, Mel. I got the credit card for the business. I've got the bank account for the business, but I still have personal bills to pay. How do I take it from there and put it so I can pay the personal bills? You write yourself a check. Or, yeah, so you, and I say write yourself a check. I don't even know if people carry checks anymore, but you can do an automated payment that is a draw or a distribution from your business account to your personal account to pay the bills. Okay. And if you know that your personal bills require you to have $3,000 a month, you can set it up so $3,000 a month automatically transfers from the business account to your personal account, and then you pay all your bills out of the personal account. There is no difference in tax because it's a sole proprietorship. Okay. The money you distribute to yourself from it to you is not taxed any differently. So that's how that would work. You're not gonna take a salary check because it's your sole proprietor. You're not going to do any of that type of stuff. The only time you're going to start doing a salary check is in a corporation, okay, where you have taxes withheld and all of that stuff, and doing that. So that you're literally going to just do a bank transfer or a check. and that's it. And you can set it up if you know that I need X dollars as a base amount every month. Every month you transfer that amount. If one month, like for instance, April in California is, real estate taxes are due. So you might need a little extra money out of the business account to pay real estate taxes if you're in California and you own a home. So you might do an extra distribution, but you'll still put it in the personal account and pay the real estate taxes from the personal account. So that's how I would handle it. Yeah. The key thing is to completely keep it separate, where you are. It goes from business to personal, and then all the personal expenses get paid out of the personal account, and that's it. I've seen people do it where they say, "Well, I paid some personal expenses. I'll just do the accounting later, and I'll clean it up." The problem is that means that it allows someone that's going to look at your books to look at it and say, "Well, how do we know they cleaned it up correctly?" And now we're going to look. So I want to make it as clean as possible, so the confidence level of any examiner that might come in would go way high. They go, "This is so clean." Okay, great. You know, I got audited years ago because they couldn't figure out why an accountant would have so much travel. They thought all accountants just sat behind a desk. And I walked in and said, "Here's all the brochures of the places I've spoken and where I speak and this and that." And they go, "Oh, okay." And so they ended up they found like a $200 thing that was for a gift. And they said, "Really?" I go, "Look, I'll give it to you." So they disallowed $200. It cost me like $20, and we were done. So you want to make it clean. You want to keep it proper, and everything, to do that. So that's the way I would handle it. So this is another great question. How much should I take out? And Melissa, I see your question, and I'll get to that too. Um, so how much should I take out? This is going to sound. I'm going to tell you to take out as much as you need, but as little as you can. And then I'm going to tell you what to do with the difference. Okay. If we follow the wealth priority ladder, first I want to make sure we have that peace of mind fund, and that we don't have destructive debt, and we are investing and all of that. If, for instance, I have $10,000 that came in a month, I need $3,000 for my personal expenses. That leaves me $7,000. I pay the business bills is another $3,000. That leaves me $4,000 extra dollars. Okay. I leave a little bit in the business to carry me from one revenue activity to another to make sure that I'm there. And everything else, I typically will move to a high yield savings account and use it for investing. It's something that I call leapfrog funding. When you let's say that you all are doing some sort of launch or promotion, and all of a sudden you get this windfall that comes in 50,000, 100,000, 150,000 or more. You don't need it all. Now, if you do one launch a year, you need to plan for it, because you say, "I got all the revenue coming in, but that revenue has to run for the year until the next thing." That's why I say you got to know when your next revenue generating activity is. If I'm doing something at least once a quarter or once a month and money's coming in, you have a little more flexibility. Anything over and above that, I want to leapfrog into funding my investments, which is what I did. So when I would get a big project that would pay $50,000 or $100,000, I'd look at it and go, my expenses are $7,000. I want to keep $3,000. I might take a sliver of $1,000 to go celebrate. The rest I'm going to invest. And so I leap my investing, because we know that the more we can front load our investing, the more power we have in time building it down the road. And so that's why I say take as much as you need, but as little as you can, and invest the rest beyond your whole financial plan. You got it. Great questions, though. All right. Let's see. Melissa's got a question. She goes, great idea. Would you recommend having the business as an LLC or a corporation versus sole proprietorship? And what is the basis for changing? I get this question a lot. First off, I got to give you the CYA. I am not an attorney. I don't know your circumstances, so I cannot give you legal advice. However, I can give you my perspective, and it depends. So the first answer and the only answer that most accountants give is it depends. But let me give you the context of it depends. It depends on your situation in the sense of, let's just talk about what is a sole proprietorship. A sole proprietorship is the easiest form of business structure. If you receive money from a customer in return for services or something you sold, you're a sole proprietor. You made money, okay? Do you need to do anything formal? No, not really. If you're doing it in your name, if you're doing it under a brand name or something, you might have to file a DBA, a doing business as, what they call a fictitious name statement, which is a localized statement based on your county laws that you need to look at. The biggest challenge with a sole proprietorship mostly is the fact that it gives you no legal shielding. So if there's a potential for liability, then you want to be careful about it. And this is where you got to look at you got to have legal counsel to do this. But let's say that you're delivering flowers. You have a flower delivery service. The risk of an accident carries with it liability. And so what you may want to do is say, how do I shield my personal assets from doing that? The way you're going to shield your personal assets is 1, insurance, 2, entity structuring. But again, your circumstances and the state law that you're in will depend on which one and what fits the best to make that happen. So the first biggest reason to move from a sole proprietor to some sort of entity form is to limit your liability. Okay. The second is and they're hand in hand, is to reduce your audit risk. The higher your revenues are in your sole proprietorship, the more likely a chance of audit. And the third is to be able to control the taxes. Okay. So when do you shift? Here's my thinking, and this is personal thinking in doing this, is that if you're just starting out and you don't know if you have legs under the business, you haven't proved the concept, leave it as a sole proprietor. If there's potential liability, like you're doing coaching, you're doing therapy, you're doing something like that, make sure you have insurance to cover you, because that's the first line of defense. If all of a sudden you see that the business is starting to get legs and it's going somewhere, then you may want to form an LLC. Now, it may be a single member LLC, because you may be the only member of the LLC, which gets tax treatment just like a sole proprietorship, but legal treatment differently. So you get this legal shielding of this cloak of the LLC, depending on the state that you're in, because it's all dependent on state laws. Now, this is where the kind of the tipping point is that once you're an LLC, there's a point where you need to look at and say, shoot, should I become a corporation, an S corporation? And you can take your LLC and say, I want to elect to be taxed as an S corporation. When do you do that? And it depends on a lot of situations, but typically the place and I'll explain why this happens. The time that you want to start looking at it doesn't mean you do it. The time you want to start looking at it is when your net income, the net from your business, is 65,000 and above, 70,000 and above. Why am I saying that? It's because of the way the LLC's income is taxed. 100% of the income coming from the LLC is subject to what's called self-employment tax. Self-employment tax is 15.3%. Okay. So when your income in your LLC goes too high, and hopefully I'm not getting too convoluted, complicated here, but when your income goes way too high, say all of a sudden your LLC is making 100,000, 150,000, all of that's going to be subject to self-employment tax on top of income tax. So at that point, if I convert to an S corporation and pay myself salary, so let's say I have 150,000 net, I change to an S corporation, I still have the same 150,000 net, but instead I take a $50,000 salary. Here's what happens. The $50,000 salary pays self-employment tax on it. It's called Social Security. So you'll pay Social Security tax on the 50,000, but the remaining 100,000 doesn't get taxed on the self-employment. So you save self-employment tax on the remaining 100. So the reason you would shift from one of the reasons you would shift from an LLC to an S corporation is when your income gets high enough that the burden of self-employment tax is too high. And now you sit back and say, I'm going to shift to an S corporation. It gets more complicated when you do that because now you have salary, you have payroll returns and W-2s and all of that stuff. But that's why it needs to be at a certain level where the costs, the tax savings is far greater than the cost and the complications to doing it. Okay. So yeah, hopefully that helps. Okay. Great. Could I chat about the taxes I should be expecting when moving cash to and from the high yield savings account? Megan, the only thing you're going to pay tax on a high yield savings account is the amount of interest you earned. So it'll be at whatever tax rate you're at and how much interest you earn. So you only pay, moving in and out doesn't matter. It's the interest that's earned while it's in there that matters. Kathy, you said, if answered, ignore it. No, it says, is this the case when you're an LLC that's taxed as an S corporation? Expand more, Kathy, on what you mean by that. When you say, is this the case? What do you mean, is this the case? Give me a little more clarity. If you want to unmute, you can.
Shower. Just trying to avoid turning my camera on.
You don't have to turn your camera on. We'll keep it PG.
So I've been an LLC and I've probably so what my accountant filed some tax. Am I solving the problem?
Yeah.
Is that not?
Yeah. All you're doing. So here's the difference. This is a great question in the sense of, what is an S corporation? An S corporation isn't a different entity structure. So the S corporation is just a single form. It's called a Form 2553 that is filed with the IRS. It's a tax election. It's just saying to the government, saying, here's how I want you to treat me for taxes. It doesn't change. So if you have an LLC, you're still an LLC, but you're taxed as an S corporation. So there's no other paperwork to file other than the form to file with the IRS. You'll get approval for it. And then once you have approval for it, you will file your LLC tax return is either on your Schedule C if it's a single member LLC, or on a 1065 it's a multi-member LLC, which is a separate form. But your S corporation will be on an 1120S. So it's a different tax form that needs to be filed. But in order to become an S corporation, you literally just make the election to be taxed as an S corporation, and you're done. You're golden.
Thank you.
You got it, Kathy. Jessica, so the 65K net is from the sole proprietorship to the LLC. That's about where you start to look at it. Doesn't mean you automatically make the change. About 65, 70,000 in net from the sole proprietorship. You start to say, does it make sense for me to convert to an LLC? No, I'm sorry. Take it back. No. I misread your question. Okay, rewind, erase that. The move from a sole proprietor to an LLC is when you start to see that you have legs under your business. You start to see that this thing's going to go somewhere that you want to have it. Or you're taking on an inordinate amount of liability and risk because of the kind of business it is. The $65,000, $70,000 threshold is the conversion from LLC to S corporation. That's when you should consider the conversion. Doesn't mean it's automatic. You consider it, you look at it, you run the numbers, you run the calculations. Does it make sense? Will it make sense to do that? Okay. So, great questions.
I wonder, can I add to my
Yeah.
So I thought about the LLC thing, but my lady that does my a lot tougher on the taxes, a lot more complicated. There's not been a whole lot of reason. But then yet you're talking about get worried about that because I found out and you're saying that is I'm believes you and you provide the guarantee for her. So and there's a computer that I might want that because I could do this and happen that after me without that. And at the same time I have whatever I'm thinking of as Arizona, that's the right word, without the business insurance. I can't have the business unless I'm official, and so I haven't done all of that.
Well, you don't have the business insurance. You can be an official business as a sole proprietor. You just have to file probably a doing business as or fictitious name statement and all that stuff. I don't know about the Arizona thing because I'm not sure.
I haven't heard.
All right, so I'm not sure about that. But if you have liability, anytime you're giving advice, doing therapy, and there's potential for liability, you should have some sort of errors, omissions, liability insurance. Okay, no matter what kind of entity you are, you want to make sure you have insurance, and so that's how I would look at it. Now, I will tell you this: the complexity to go from a sole proprietorship to a single member LLC is not that much. You'll have to file forms to create the LLC. The LLC will have a separate ID number. You'll have an operating agreement for the LLC, which is done at the formation. And then when you file the tax returns, because it's a single member LLC, in all likelihood, it's going to end up on the Schedule C anyways, just like it did before. So I'm not sure I agree with your accountant's assessment that, it's much more complicated. And you know what? Quite frankly, even if it is complicated, the question isn't the complication. The question is it the right thing to do for Jessica? And if it's the right thing to do for Jessica, don't know this person, but I'm going to say get off your duff and do the right thing for your client.
What are your thoughts? I don't know if anyone else has a question. This was the first year that I actually out the 1099s, my contractors. I actually did it. So, but I've learned the hard way. I don't deal with accounting software, so it's a pain. The only way I can figure out how to do the federal ones was write them on the red forms, and the rest of them online for the contractors. So that's what I should do again this next year. But then it was weird putting my social on there, and then I learned I can stay in still sole proprietor and having.
All right, I'm gonna give you some tough love.
Yeah.
Where is your greatest value?
You mean money wise?
Yeah, where is your greatest value of your time?
Oh. I feel like I've spent a lot of money on a lot of people right now to try to pass my time back. So.
Well, here's why I'm saying that. How long did it take you to do your 1099s? You said it was a pain.
Well, it was because I didn't know. Like I've known. Like I was supposed to do it 2 years ago, and I keep getting to do it this year. Actually, I didn't know you buy the forms. Like that was the whole thing. That's ridiculous. I don't want it.
Well,
why?
because my question is, why are you doing the bookkeeping? Why are you doing the stuff that isn't in your wheelhouse?
Oh my goodness. Oh, okay. So you got to realize.
You've come a long way. So I'm going to acknowledge you've come a long way.
Yeah, but you got to realize I came from a little tiny town,
Mhm.
and I was going to buy the local restaurant. That was the plan when I was in high school. And you got to realize that owned it they have accountants that literally took all the money, wiped them out. Why they were very different. Like that's where my mind is. And you trust people with.
So hold on a second. I love this question. This is a great thing. Okay. And for those of you on Instagram, hopefully if you didn't hear it, she gave an example. Jessica gave an example of she came from a small town. She was going to buy the restaurant in that small town. There was 2 owners there. The accountants, they had accountants there, but the accountants basically took off with the food and the money.
Yeah, it was just 2 different times, people, and that's
Yeah.
not the only time I've heard that. So it's terrifying to let
Yeah.
someone have access.
So I agree. You're like when I was doing accounting, you do not, okay? We do not outsource the whole financial life of our business. We do not give them rights to access our accounts. We give them the rights enough for them to be the scribe of the history, the transactions, and everything that goes on. But they don't have no signing authority. They have no signature authority. They're not on a signing card. They don't have bank relationships. They don't have any of that. That's a recipe for disaster. Okay? So when I say hire a bookkeeper, that bookkeeper or someone that's going to do the accounting for you is going to get the bank statements. They're going to get the credit card statements. They're going to reconcile them and they're going to put them into a system, QuickBooks, Xero, whatever it is, and print out the reports so Jessica can see them. But never in there do they ever get access to the bank account. Do they ever get access to the credit card accounts? Because when we start to mix that, not saying I believe in the good nature and in that humanity in general is good, but situations and temptations can carry us away. So I'm not going to do it. So anyone that does anything with respect to my accounts, wealth-wise and everything, they don't have access directly. And any transaction that might occur above a certain level automatically triggers something to me. So we can put some controls in place because the reality is all you need is an accounting student that understands QuickBooks or something that's going to just take the bank statements, put them into the accounting system, categorize the categories on what the expenses are, what the revenues are, reconcile the bank statements, and have you be able to look at what it all looks like. QuickBooks or any of these accounts, you can limit the access and you can limit them from, they can't get access to the bank accounts themselves and say, I want to withdraw some money. When we get in trouble is when we outsource completely. We relinquish control to everything. Just take care of it. And when we do that and we're not checking the pulse on the patient, even with a company I'm on a board of that will do 300 million this year. I'm the chairman of the audit committee. I'm the chairman of the transaction. I'm on the transaction committee and the board of directors. They still send me financials. I'm looking at the financials. They're doing all the stuff, but we have controls in place to make sure that no one person, it's called separation of duties, has complete access from beginning to end where they can fabricate invoices, do all kinds of things, and before you know it, they pulled everything out from under you. It's a great question and a legitimate concern. But your relationship with these professionals has to be at an arm's length nature. We're not going to relinquish the responsibility to allow someone in to take care of everything, soup to nuts, without checks and balances and controls in place. Otherwise, we set a recipe for disaster.
That's good to know I'm not crazy.
No, you're not. No, you're not. So you got it, Jessica. Yeah. Awesome. Other questions? Yeah, Hiscox insurance for coaching business is pretty good. So Other questions? Anything else coming up? If not, cool. All right, y'all. This was fun. These were great questions. And hopefully it helped, gave you some guidance, gave you some thoughts to think about. Know that we're on a journey here. There's a lot more stuff coming. I've got to put more dates on the calendar for these Monday sessions, assuming that y'all like them and everything. And I know that I've got some stuff coming up more around the book. You'll know that. How do you recommend we keep track of our expenses? I am Soltara has a question, and Liz Clark's got a question. So let me get to your question on Instagram. How do I recommend we keep track of our expenses? Here's the thing. I just focus on sales and have trouble focusing on profit. All right. These are two good comments, and I want to make sure that we focus on a couple things. One is sales, like it or not, is a vanity metric. Okay? I don't care what the sales are. I care what the profits are. What is the cash that you get at the end of the day that is in your hands, that can stay in your hands? Period. End of story. Okay? Without it, you cannot continue to function as a business. So your profits are far more important than your sales. Because in order to get to profits, we have to manage from the sales all the way down. And what that means is that we need to look at it from that perspective. Now, you asked, what's the best way to keep track of our expenses? You need to put it, if you have a business, you need to put it into a program. You can do it on a spreadsheet. It's just not efficient, it's not effective, and it's not easy as it starts to grow. And there's so many different solutions, whether it's a QuickBooks Online, Xero. There's a lot of different solutions that can track your income in and your expenses out. Because until you do that, you don't know. If you sit back and go, where did all my cash go? Well, we don't know until we start to dig in and say, where did all the cash go? Why did this expense go? I just did a coaching with a dear friend who, this goes back to Jessica's question, who relinquished responsibility basically for the numbers and allowed someone else to run it, and they weren't looking at the numbers on a regular basis. Well, all of a sudden he starts to feel the pinch of cash flow, and he's trying to figure out what the heck's going on. And after we went through it and he started to go through it, he literally found and created a plan to cut his expenses and increase his profits by $400,000. $400,000. And the reason was that totally focused on the top line versus the bottom line. We got to focus on the bottom line. And the way to do it is you have good systems. You're following it. And I get it. You might look and go, I don't want to look at the numbers. Oh God, I don't want to look at the numbers. But I get it. That's like saying, I don't want oxygen to breathe. The profits are what are going to allow your business to breathe. It's going to allow it to grow. It's going to allow it to continue. It's going to allow you to breathe. So we got to manage the oxygen. The oxygen is cash flow. The oxygen is profits in a business. And so we need to put a system in place. I'll be honest. I've used QuickBooks for years. It's what I do. There's plenty of other ones out there, but I've got so much historical data in QuickBooks that I'm not changing, and it works great. I mean, I run my payroll through it, and I can run my 1099s, I can run my W-2s, all of that way. I hope that helped. It says, let me go back. You said something else. How do you okay? And then you said having trouble, and I just got a quote from Debt hunch for a consolidation loan. Is that a good idea? Court & Co., you talked about a quote from Debt Hunch for a consolidation loan. So that means that you've got credit card debts in place that you're trying to consolidate. The first three letters of consolidation is con. I would be really, really careful on what they tell you they're going to do on a debt consolidation loan. Have you put yourself on a debt payment plan, and have you talked to credit card companies on your own yet? And if you haven't, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go to melabraham.com/no debt. melabraham.com/no debt. You're on Instagram. If you just type in no debt, it'll send you the link. And what that will do is it'll give you an Excel spreadsheet. I want you to put your debts in there. I want you to put the payments in there, the interest rate in there. I want you to get on a debt payment plan. Here's what a consolidation loan is and what they may do. It depends on what they're doing with it, and I don't know the terms of it. But a lot of these companies, what they do is they just let you default on the bills. They destroy your credit in the process, and they figure until you default on the bills, the credit card companies won't listen, so they'll wait till you default, and they'll wait till it gets bad enough that they can now try to negotiate with the credit card companies, and they'll come back with a deal that maybe they get, maybe they don't get, but in the process, you've been destroyed. And I think you can get just as good a deal, if not better, on your own, and we don't need to default on them in all likelihood to make that happen. And so that's my concern. I'm not a fan of them. There are a few that maybe it makes sense, but you got to look at the fine details, because most of them are going to turn around and just say, we're just not going to pay the bills. You send them all to us. And then we'll pay the bills on our system the way we see them. And what they're doing is they're delaying paying so they can negotiate. But the person that pays the price for that is you. How to get kids involved and pay them tax-free. I'm in Canada, not sure if it's the same in the US. It's probably not the same in the US, but I can't speak to the Canadian law. I do think that we need to get our kids involved. Forget the taxes for a moment, Maria, but is that I want to get kids involved because the greatest gift we can give our children is to be financially literate and financially independent. It's the greatest gift we can give them. The second greatest gift we can give them is that we become financially literate and financially independent. When they are financially literate and independent, and we're financially literate and independent, they're not knocking on our door at 30 years old. We're not knocking on their doors at 70 years old to get on a couch because we can't afford to live. Okay? And so I want to be able to get them involved to have real conversations. Jeremy started having conversations around money with me at 10 years old, 11 years old. It's not about, people think, oh gosh, they'll be so focused on money, they'll become greedy. No, that's a values conversation. It's not a money conversation. If they become greedy, that's a values conversation, not a money conversation. But if we can get our kids to do projects for the business, we should be able to legitimately pay them from the business. In the US, I like doing that, especially in a sole proprietor, because you don't pay any kind of Social Security tax if they're under age 18. And we can put their money into a Roth IRA where it grows tax-free for the rest of their life. Okay, I can go more into that if we need to. But in Canada, I don't know the vehicles that we could use to make that happen. But I do think that we need to get it dialed in. Do I train on creating systems that mentioned that will help us focus on profit? You know what? I gotta be totally frank with you. I used to, I don't anymore. I used to really focus on the systems. I don't anymore. My focus is on the wealth side, in the sense of, and I will work with the businesses to help them create and optimize their profits so they can optimize their wealth. But I'm not really a systems guy per se. There's probably better people out there to do that. I'm just being straight and honest about it. Cool. Let me look here. I know I got a couple things that came in here. Question: is insurance an umbrella for all or separated per company? So this is a great question. You know what? How many DBAs can you have? JJ Jones. You can have as many as you want. It's based on the county. DBAs are filed with the county, so you got to look at their rules there. But then you got to keep them valid or keep them. The question is, why do you want that many, or do you need that many? There is an insurance and an umbrella for all or separated. You want to have a conversation with your insurance company. The umbrella policy is a secondary policy that pays when other policies have been used up. The umbrella policy might be able to go over multiple companies, but in all likelihood, it may be specific. So and the umbrella policies require certain sub policies underneath it to even to qualify for it. So auto policy, homeowners policy, and those kinds of things need to be in place to be able to get an umbrella policy. And so you want to make sure that, because the umbrella policy covers things when these policies down here are used up. So you want to make sure that all the policies down here are qualified under the umbrella, so the umbrella will get triggered if you need it. But that's a company by company perspective. You got to see what remember, all insurance companies, y'all listen to this carefully. Their primary business goal for an insurance company, their primary business goal is to collect premiums. Their secondary business goal is to find an exclusion so they don't have to pay you. And their third business goal is they go, well, we got the premiums. Damn it, we don't have an exclusion. We're going to have to pay out. So you're number 3 on the ladder. So that umbrella policy, anytime you're getting insurance, some of the most important things to understand is what are the exclusions that allow them to get out of jail, that they don't have to pay. And be really clear on those, because they're going to use those against you when it comes down to pay. Just because you paid your premiums on time, they're going to try to find a way out, because that's their secondary goal. Okay? So you want to make sure that when you get an umbrella policy, you literally go through it all and say, hey, will it cover for this, 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 this? I have these companies, and they'll say yes, no, and get it in writing. Make it part of the policy. Missy, thank you so much. Sessions are great. I learn something every week. Question from Chris Ann. My husband started a YouTube channel for entertainment. No DBA or business. He's starting to earn a tiny bit of revenue, $100. Does he need a DBA, or can it be reported as him? It can be reported as him. I know he will get a 1099 after a certain amount. After $600, he'll get a 1099. Mark, 4% income tax if resident of Puerto Rico, question mark. What? Mark, you have your hand up. Let's bring you up. Let's have a conversation to the extent that I know the Puerto Rican rules.
But you might have some.
Thank you, man.
If I resident be like 85 days, is it actually accurate? I tax at percent. That will save me.
Yeah, so here's the challenge with this. There are some very specific criteria to make it work. Okay. There's a 3-year rule. You've got to be there 3 years. There is a rule around, and I don't know all the nuances of it, so you got to look at it. There's a rule about, hey, is this a pre-existing business? And so if it's a pre-existing business, you don't get the same treatment potentially. So there's some nuances to doing that. That's a very complicated, nuanced structure. The primary thing, though, I think, is this: do you want to live in Puerto Rico?
Consideration.
So, because I know a number of people that went down there. Some are still there, some are not. Okay. You got to look at, is this a place that I can be there long term? Because you're there for a while. You got to be there at least 3 years, and you got to be there 6 months and a day, and you can only have certain number of times back to the U.S. And I mean, they're tracking it meticulously because of the fact that you can go from 52% to 4%. Then they look at it and say, is this prior income or is this new income? Is this capital gain income? Is it ordinary income? Because all of that gets treated differently. And so it's not something that I can kind of, there's more to it than just say, I'm just going to move to Puerto Rico. You may not get the same result if it's coming from some of your existing businesses.
Definitely. All of it. From Italian tax, Ireland.
Tax havens? No, you got to look at where they're, and Ireland and all that stuff may or may not work. The difference is that Puerto Rico is a territory. The others will be based on a tax treaty. So you got to look at what those are, and they're all different. Now, if the income's large enough, it may make sense to do some of these things. But if it's not, you kind of go, you know. And look, at one point, Steph and I looked at moving to Puerto Rico. But, you know, when I moved from LA County to Orange County, my mother, it was like as if we moved to South Africa. Nothing wrong with South Africa. We moved 90 miles. But she has been slinging that you're so far away to, like, for 14 years. She has not stopped. She's relentless. So, like, if we left the country, oh my God, there'd be hell to pay. Plus, now I got grandchildren here. So we looked at the quality of life and said we would be making the decision solely for taxes, and it isn't the quality of life we want and the way we want to live our life. And so I never want to make a decision that's tax motivated if life doesn't come along with it.
All right, that plays right on a tax. Get an apartment months.
Yep.
And how you actually.
Yep. Yeah. And that's the reality of it, is I would go down there and I would spend the time and live like a local. So, does it make sense from a life standpoint? Go, I could get used to this. Okay. So it doesn't feel like you're on vacation, that you have to go to the store. You have to go to whatever. You got to get this, that Amazon Prime isn't really that prime down there, things like that. The weather, all of a sudden a hurricane hits, those kinds of things. So, yeah, you got it, my friend. Good to see you, man.
Good to see you too.
Yep. All right. Let's see. All right. So he says, apart from having an LLC and business owner, is there anything else you recommend that is a must? I am solitary. Now, I think that's the start. When you start to look at asset protection stuff, you really need legal counsel in the state you're in, because state laws will determine whether you're protected or not. But the start is making sure that you have your risk in different buckets, and anything that is insurable, insured, where there's high level of risk. Okay. All right. Liz Clark says something, is a portable pension rollover still qualified? How can you tell in an employee stock purchase plan that was discontinued by the company is now considered qualified or not? Liz, are you on?
Yes.
All right, tell me more.
So I haven't hired from that is supported by the company. Funds are there. Or what was not just because I retired, but
Yeah, so it's frozen.
yeah.
What's it invested in?
So, in company stock, single company stock,
What single company? Their company?
yes.
Ugh.
So I-
What's their company doing?
Well, it's FedEx.
Oh,
Say that. Hey, it's great.
oh, okay, okay. I thought,
I think I'll move up somewhere. I'm trying to figure out like an IRA investment. I do.
well, it's probably I don't know the specifics of it, but it's probably still sitting in a qualified plan. It's just frozen and not continually funded. So
Correct.
so your rollover would be a rollover to an IRA,
Okay.
and most likely, and then you can diversify it if you want. You know, I don't think you should have more than 5% of your investments in a single company stock. It's just too much risk.
Right.
And so you got to look at the whole strategy of your portfolio and your risk profile and where this fits in. But if it was a stock purchase plan in some smaller company and not FedEx, I'd be a little more concerned, but it's FedEx. But to your original question, it's likely just a frozen plan, no additional contributions, and it's just sitting there. They'd probably be happy that you rolled it out because they don't have to pay the cost to administer it because they have to do filing on it every year for it. And you can roll it to an IRA, and they may roll. You got to talk to them about it or to the IRA company and say, can they roll it in kind? And they can roll the FedEx stock directly into an IRA account. Doesn't really matter if it's qualified. Then even if you liquidated the FedEx stock, there's no tax impact in you because it's still in a qualified plan. It's like buying and selling in an IRA, and then you can move the cash over and reinvest it if you wanted to. But what I would do first is get clear on what is in the plan, what your ability is to move it by talking to, since it's FedEx, HR should be able to walk you through that. Then talk to the company you would probably have it housed at, whether it's Vanguard, Fidelity, Schwab, wherever. What was that?
It would go to
All right. So talk to the folks at Vanguard and say, here's what I got. What's the easiest way to bring this over without any tax impact? And what do you need? And make sure that they're consistent. Don't start moving anything until you get permission on both sides and you understand how it's going to go.
the follow-on question. I pension that is additional. You have to move portable. So they're going to give me a lump sum plus, and it's the lump sum if I roll it over IRA. At this point, I don't need to draw from it. Get it moved out of there. Get the monthly. That's type thing. Different things.
Yeah. So
on the portable lump sum, rolling that over IRA.
but if you do one, you have to do both.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
Well,
But if I move when I'm saying I'm rolling portable part, lump sum part, that's qualified, or is it not qualified?
it should be qualified, but I don't know enough about it. I think, Liz, do you have a financial advisor that's looking over your portfolios?
Not really.
You need
I have
one.
a financial advisor at Vanguard, but the guy I had just left. I have talked to him tomorrow, but I don't have it all. Yeah, let's look.
You need someone that's going to look at it all and look at the complexities and nuances of each of these and what does it mean to move them, because once you make the decision, your feet are in concrete.
Right.
and the decisions for the rest of your life.
The pros and-
Exactly. So it is. And so as much as I might be able to guide you, this is not the right mechanism to do it. This is going to require someone going through the plan documents, understanding the nuances, what's the pros, the cons. You know, if we move this, it triggers this, and actually does a very detailed strategic plan, says, here's how we're going to liquidate this out. And use it in a way that maximizes your cash flow and minimizes your tax impact and accomplishes your financial goals. You have some unique mechanisms here, a portable pension, a traditional pension, and an ESPP that have a lot of value to them, that a lot of people don't get these. So it's like my mom has this, she's got a medical plan that is historical from my dad's work. It's a rollover from there. He passed away 14 years ago. And like, you know, where she's living at a assisted living, they said, oh, we should get a different plan. I go, we ain't touching the plan because it's a Cadillac plan. And they're paying, and she's on dialysis 3 times a week. I mean, no, ain't touching the plan. I don't want to touch these things. And I don't want you to make a move until someone has put them all down and said, all right, Liz, here's how this is going to play out. And here's the strategy to make it work. Because there's too much that one thing goes wrong and we could trigger a tax on the whole thing. Or we could blow an election. We could reduce our benefits. We don't want to do that. It has to fit what your overall strategy is.
You're giving the education.
Yeah.
That's why I'm here. That's what.
You got it. And what you could do, instead of having someone that says, that wants to charge you a percentage for management, you go to CFP, you sit back and you say, you find a couple of CFPs and you interview them and you say, I want to pay you a fee for service, a fee for a plan. So you know that the fee's, I don't know, $500, $1,000, $2,000, whatever it is, but you know that that's the fee. And the outcome is this plan with action steps. Then you can decide if they're going to help you execute it or not. But then you don't have this ongoing expense, but you have someone that got their arms around the whole thing.
Like asking an architect.
Yeah.
I got a guy in my.
Good. Yeah. And you tell them, I'm not looking for investment advice yet. I'm looking for financial planning advice now.
One we talked to one that stuff up is, yeah, that's what we really didn't want to talk to.
Yeah, because they want the ongoing fees.
That's
Yeah.
So we got nothing. Except invested some. Say, okay, good faith. But at the end of the day, that's investing. That's it.
You see, here's where the problem lies. And I want everyone, I know that we're going long, but I want everyone to hear this. All of your financial plans should start with your life vision. From the life vision, we create the plan. From the plan, we create the strategy. From the strategy, we create the tactics. If this dude, and I'm calling him a dude, is making investments for you, he's at the tactics level. How can he assure you that the tactics he's using is going to fulfill the strategy, that's going to fulfill the plan, that's going to give you the vision? And he cannot. And I think, quite frankly, it is wrong and it is malpractice, in my opinion, because their job as financial planners is to help you achieve those dreams. They can't guarantee it. But if he doesn't even want to talk about the overall dreams, then the tactical decision to make an investment, how does he know it as it fulfills it? Because then we know the tactics. Now we know what the action steps are. But that's the pathway. It starts with vision to plan, to strategy, to tactics, to action steps. And too often we want to know at the tactical level what to do, but the tactics should be driven by what we're trying to accomplish. And if they're making investments without a plan in place, that means they didn't understand your vision and they don't even know if the strategy is right. Frankly, he doesn't deserve your money if he ain't going to do it.
We can fix that.
All right. I mean, that was kind of strong. Okay, came on strong, but I'm here to sell you your dreams. I don't want people taking it away.
Clarity.
Yeah, you got it. All right. All right, y'all. You guys rock. I'll get some more dates on the calendar as we go forward and everything. Stay in touch with me. Stay on this path with me. Financial freedom's your birthright. Let's go claim it. Let's do this thing together. I want to make sure that we get you there. All right. And I'll tell you more about my book as we get closer. And in the meantime, I'm going to get prepped. I got another live that I'm doing, a training that I'm doing in 30 minutes. All right, y'all. You have a blessed day. You're a blessing to me to get a chance to share this time with you, to answer the questions, and to help you all out. All right. Thank you so much. Cheers. And pray for some sleep, 8-week-old puppy.